Okay, picking up where we left off on page 11, talking about the parts of a computer-based information system. So essentially, there are 6 parts. Hardware, database, which isn't showing in this picture for whatever reason. Software, some sort of telecommunications, people, and procedures. Now, I want you to stop and think about this for a minute, because I'm going to give you a little scenario. All right. Let's consider a typical office environment. Where you have just office workers. You know what I'm talking about. People who sit at a desk, and they have like the Microsoft Office suite on their computers. And they do correspondence and simple math with spreadsheets. Nothing really fancy. And so, let's say that you are now the IT director, and they come to you and say, we have a budget of $3,000 per person to upgrade because we want to make our office people more efficient. Our eventual goal is to make them so efficient that we could reduce our staff. Okay, so go. Now, I've got a budget, and so you might think, well, some of their computers are kind of slow, and maybe we should get faster processors and more RAM and more disk space, and maybe we ought to upgrade to the latest version of Windows and the latest version of Office, and maybe we ought to get faster, gigabyte Ethernet, and maybe we ought to do this and maybe we ought to do that. In reality, the places where you can make the most amount of impact, as far as it is not hardware. It's not the database. It's not the software. It's not the telecommunication. It's the people and procedures. Here's what the real thing is. If you were to go in and buy, Susie, who worked in this office, a brand new computer, top of the line, all the greatest and latest stuff, the amount of productivity gain from this new system is probably going to be very tiny. I mean, she is not going to be producing emails faster, or Word documents faster, or Excel spreadsheets faster. Come on. It's not going to make that much difference. And maybe, okay, I'm saying 1%. I just made that number up. But it's going to be a minimal amount. However, if you sent Susie to training on how to better use Microsoft Office and Word and Excel and PowerPoint, and if you establish procedures and templates and all the rest of the stuff, you can actually make a big deal. So, knowing where the weak points are in a system is kind of sort of important. All right. There's a little thing here, a common thread that's going to appear throughout the course. And it goes kind of something like this. You should really just resist the urge to just blindly upgrade to the latest and greatest, whatever it is, hardware or software, operating system, whatever, just because it's new. There really has to be a valid business need for you to make a change. So just because something new comes out doesn't mean your business is going to immediately run out and go, well, let's immediately upgrade to the new version. No, that's probably not what they're going to do. Somebody's going to sit back and say, what's the valid business need? If this is going to increase my efficiency by 1% and it's going to cost me $1,000 a seat, I'm probably not going to do it. It's just not worth it. Okay, so ding, 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 ding. Pay attention, because that was a common thread. I'll repeat it one more time. There must be a valid business need in order to perform an upgrade. Okay. In the book, they go through a chapter on hardware, and I'm not going to go through all this kind of stuff. It's kind of sort of simple. So I'm going to kind of just skip over the hardware and that kind of software pieces and databases. I will tell you though that there's an interesting thing in here talking about the figure 1-10 on page 15. Let me see if I can find that guy. There you go. And basically, what it's basically telling you is that the growth of data is just astronomical. You've probably heard the big data. And so just the amount of data that we're collecting is just tremendous. And so databases become more and more important. People just don't do business systems without having databases. It's practically unheard of. Okay, that's the only takeaway from that. Telecommunications, we're going to dive into telecommunications just a little bit because it talks about networking and things of that nature. So networking is kind of important. And, the definition of a network, practically everyone now has a network at home. You probably have, a DSL router or perhaps a cable router, some sort of a box, a modem at your house, and you have a wireless access point router combo that you've got. So all your devices either hardwired into this guy or use wireless. So you're using a network, most likely, right this very second. So they're nothing really new. And we're going to have an entire chapter talking about them. So the only thing I really want to talk about is these terms. The term internet, okay, makes sense. Then there's intranet. So internet. Internet is the one you know about. Internet is what we're looking through right now. The intranet is basically it's the same thing. It's just designed for people inside a business alone. So for example, in my previous employ, we had like a SharePoint site that everyone inside the organization could see, but no one from the outside. So that SharePoint site was part of an intranet. We used it, but no one else could see it. And then there's another one called extranet. An extranet is where I have like a partner, and so I let my partner come in and see my SharePoint site. Not everybody in the world, so it's kind of like a pick and choose combination of who I want in. Okay, and typically when you let a partner in, you don't let the partner into everything. They don't get to see, your Exchange email server and all your file servers. It's going to be just pick and choose who and pick and choose what. Okay. Just a discussion here talking about the web. Everyone knows about the web, right? Cloud computing. We're going to be talking about cloud computing until you get tired of it. So I'm going to kind of skip that for the time being. But the web is, the World Wide Web is actually a subset of the Internet. The Internet is this big thing. The Internet has lots and lots and lots of stuff. I'll admit the vast majority of the traffic is, the Internet and, streaming services. But, file services and email, those aren't, my email doesn't use the web. It uses the Internet. Okay, cool. All right. So, bottom line is the web is a subset of the larger Internet. All right, cool. Let's continue. So they talk about, on page 17, they talk about the people and procedures on page 18. And so, okay, that's, good stuff. You probably need to read that. Now, this is kind of a cool little pyramid that we often use, talking about how business information systems fit together. And so we're going to talk about all these terms, and in fact, we're going to have chapters that deal with all these things. So at the bottom of the pyramid is the bare bones basic thing, and it's going to be some sort of enterprise system that collects data from everyone, and then kind of going up the pyramid, so to speak, is what's called an MIS. There's an entire chapter on MIS, so just kind of nod your head. And decision support system. There's an entire chapter on that too. So this is gathering basic data, and this is kind of making decisions. So this is more like data, and this is more like information. Okay, cool. And then knowledge management and special purpose. This is more like the knowledge piece. So remember we had data, information, and knowledge. So that's basically how these things stack up. And we're going to have an entire chapter to go through them all. So I just wanted to kind of show you that one. Essentially, the decisions that are made at the lower end of the pyramid are typically things like, simple things. It doesn't take hardly any decision-making authority whatsoever. So, for example, let's say you had an automated warehouse, and this layer of the pyramid said, okay, we've reached the reorder point on kumquats. We need to order some more kumquats from the factory. Okay, that's probably perfectly okay. No one has to approve that. It's completely automated. Way up here is, I need to pick another location for a new store. Okay? Now that's going to take an awful lot of thinking, and high-level people are going to have to decide, because there's no computer that's going to be making that decision for you. Okay? Okay. Let's continue. All right. Continuing, page 19, we talk about e-commerce. And so e-commerce is one of those things where it really, a silly but relatively accurate definition of electronic commerce is doing business on the web. Okay, that's essentially it. Yeah, there's lots of different types of e-commerce, but again, we'll talk about that in a little bit of detail. So they show a couple of categories. So a couple of categories, business to business. So let's say, for example, that I'm Dell Computer, and I want to order some CPU processors from Intel. What do you think? Somebody calls them on the phone and say, hey, could you send me a couple thousand processors? Is that how that works? No. You think somebody sits at a web browser and goes to the Intel website and places an order? No. Those two systems are linked together. They have a business-to-business arrangement. So somebody pushes a button over here at Dell, it magically shows up over here as an order for stuff. Okay, so this is business to business. There's no retail transaction. There's no taxes and the rest of that stuff. So business to business. Business to consumer, that's just the normal kind of things where you go to Amazon and you buy, a Beanie Baby or a book. Doesn't matter what it is because they're a business and you're a consumer, and so it's just business to consumer. Consumer to consumer is more like eBay, where my primary business is not selling junk I found in the attic. I cleaned out the attic and found some junk and I put it out on eBay and somebody bought it. So that's a consumer to consumer kind of a thing. So those are the three categories: business to business, business to consumer, and consumer to consumer. They try to make a distinction between electronic commerce and mobile commerce, and there's really isn't much. The only practical thing that you could say is that the mobile commerce typically is designed for smaller screens. Okay, in the beginning, websites had lots of static information, and phones were kind of small, and you would bring it up and it would come up and say, this is the mobile version of the site. Now, most phones now have high enough resolution that when that happens, I tell it, no, I don't want the mobile version. Give me the full version. I'll zoom in the stuff that I want. I don't really need a special thing for mobile commerce. So anyway, mobile commerce is all about wireless devices, typically on a smaller platform. And there are some other things. When we get to that chapter, we'll go into a little bit more detail, but not too much. Okay, so they're trying to kind of make a point here with this figure. Well, that's a horrible figure. We're missing the little squares. Oh, that's because we're supposed to do something. Ha ha ha. All right. The idea of an old processing system, paper-based processing system, compared to a honest-to-God, real information system kind. And the point of this diagram was supposed to be that electronic commerce can cut an awful lot of the stuff out. You don't have to go through and prepare a paper. You don't have to send it to a sales rep. You don't have to get it approval, and you don't have to do this and this. So remember we talked about the 6 pieces of a system. We had hardware and software and database. Remember all that? Okay. And I said people and procedures are the places where you make your money. Well, electronic commerce essentially took the people and the procedures parts. You eliminated a step. Okay. Because here's a story. Whenever you automate an existing system, you never want to just automate exactly what they're doing now. Okay? They have 7 steps that they're doing. And so you're going to automate those 7 steps. No, probably what you need to do is take those 7 steps and cut them down to 2. So that's where you make money. You make money in reducing the complexity, reducing the steps, the procedure pieces. And of course, there's a people piece in there as well. So once again, people and procedures is where you make the most bang for a buck. Okay, this is a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark. We'll pick this thing up again in just a few.